not a turning video, but an upgrade video. This is my Draper WTL90, which is a Reeves drive type lathe. Now there's loads of these around. Popular one in America is the Harbor Freight lathe, which has got a similar sort of drive mechanism, I think. I don't know about the bed. This one's a full cast iron bed. I love it. It doesn't have a massive swing, 6 inches or something like that. What's this? Yeah, 6-inch swing. But it does have a swivel head, and you can have, you know, turning out board if you want. And I like it. But these types of drives, and I've took the cover off here because I knew I was doing this work. It's clunky and quite noisy. So I'll start her up, and that's the sort of noise we've got. It's not horrendous, but there's a few little rattles at slow speed, which is not perfect. Now you do have your sort of 10-speed change, and you can move this quite easily. I've already had this stripped and I've made sure it works well. There's full tilt, and if you know Reeves drives, you'll know that the diameter of the pulleys alters. So at the minute we're on a small pulley over there, a large pulley there. This motor spins at 1400 regardless, but as the pulley diameters change because of the pulleys squeezing together and opening up, you get a different speed on the drive. So as I get faster, this one is getting a bigger diameter, while this one is getting a smaller diameter. And you can see, as they open up, you see the belt over here is right on the outside now, biggest diameter, smallest diameter on this one. Benefits of these: at slow speed you get higher torque. At high speed, you know, it's possible to be turning a piece of wood and you can stop the lathe. You don't get reverse drive on this, and you've only got those 10 spots. It's not a linear speed change. You've just got your options there. Now, what I wanted was a bit more power. This one, get rid of all the rubbish here. This one, if you can read that upside down, is 350 watts, which is about, I think, half horsepower. There's the 1400 speed setting. Phase 1 motor, capacitor run, I think, and that's about as much as my knowledge of it. So what I've done, and I've been looking out for this, but I was lucky, a mate of mine, his dad had some spare kit that he didn't want, believe it or not. So what I've got here is a 3 horsepower 2.2 kilowatt motor, 3 phase, which needs to be run by an inverter. Now this inverter is there's the model number of it, and this came with the motor from my mate, so I'm very lucky there. But I've looked them up, and I had to download the instructions on how to use it. So this video is going to be me building this motor onto that lathe. I've already done some work on building a controller box for this inverter. It does come with this one, but it didn't come with an extension. That does come out, and it's got a short bit of cable there. It didn't have an extension, and I didn't want to be using this right next to the lathe. So I'm going to take this off the wall. That was just up there temporary for tests, and I'm going to show you what I've done with this. So it's going to be a longish video. Skip around. The first part will be showing you the new motor running from the inverter and all the settings on the inverter. After that, I'll be showing you the build as to how I get the motor onto the lathe, hopefully finishing up with the lathe running with the new motor setup on there. Okay, so I'm just going to switch the camera around and show you the inverter and the controller box I've put together. Now I've had to connect it with the UVW connections slightly different to what they're printed on the inverter connectors inside there. You know, it tells you UVW, because the orientation of this on my lathe would mean forward was reverse and reverse was forward if I followed the markings on here. So what I did was I just swapped the V and W round, and it produced the directions that I want. So let's see that one. If I do a job, I needs to be inside, and you put a case on it and stuff for safety. But this is just to quickly show you how things are going. Power's disconnected at the minute. I'm not going to go open a blue light. So, show you that in a minute, which is the box I made to control stuff. Just get some of these wires less tangled up. First of all, let's try and show you some of the connections here. In the bottom, inside there, is pretty simple. Now what I'm going to do is I'll get a torch, so hopefully you can see inside here. Alright. Let's see if we can get a picture. So all you've got there are 6 connections. You've got your earth, neutral, live from your 240 supply on the left, and then you've got the UVW for your 3-phase motor on the right. Dead simple. So I've connected them up, so that cable on the left there is going to your ring main, cable on the right is going straight to the motor, and you can see it going over there behind us. Alright, the other side, the other end of this box is a little bit more intricate. Now what I've done in there, and I'm going to show you on a little bit of a diagram, those are all the connections. There's 12 of them. I think I've used 10 out of the 12. Those are all connections so that you can run an external control box, and that control box, depending on which ones you use, can do a variety of things. The cable I've used, because I wanted 12-core cable, is actually alarm cable. The biggest voltage that goes through these wires is 15 volts, so you don't need anything very heavy. This board is actually quite good. It comes with a 5 volts supply and a 15 volt, and that's what I've used to run some of the lights on the switches and stuff. So that's hard to see, but I'll show you on a diagram. Right, so I had to download the instructions, and I've just messed about with this because the instructions cover loads of different types. So you can see some of these areas I've highlighted in yellow, and after a few weeks, to be honest, of messing about, I've narrowed down to just the bits that I've changed and I've used, and which have worked for me. So going from, if we call this kind of page 1, that's the inverter, the model number. The one that I've got is a single phase supply to a 3-phase output. Okay, so it's an AT1. Basic connections, we've already talked about the UVW and the live neutral earth. This diagram's misleading because of course those connections are all at one side of the inverter. All of these other connections are at the other side of the inverter. But what I've wrote on here are the things that I've used. So you have some settings of X1 up to X6, and these can be set to external switches as fixed speeds. So you can set them to a certain hertz value, which will produce, you know, in the end, a fixed speed. Common ports, so all of these are connected to that. When the connection is made, that speed overrides whatever is set by the potentiometer. Down here is your connections for that external potentiometer, so you can have your variable speed through those connections. What else? These are, like I said, the connections for the motor and the power. Over here is more detail about the fixed speeds. So you've got X1, X2, X3, X4, X5, X6. X4 and 5, when they're connected, you have your forward motion and your reverse motion, and I've connected that up to a switch. Your X1, 2, 3 are your fixed speed values. Now if X1 is connected, then section speed 1 is engaged, X2 section speed 2, X3 section speed 3. But on top of that, you can have a combination of them. So if you were to connect X1 and X2 and have them both connected, you get a fourth speed. If you connect X1 and X3, you get a fifth speed, and X2 and X3, you get a sixth one. And that's what this table tries to explain here. So where you see a 0, that actually means a connection. A 1 is not connected, which I think is very odd. It's the wrong way around to me, but never mind. So if you have section speed 1 and section speed 3 disconnected, and then section speed 2 connected, then of course you've got section speed 2. But let's look at the higher values here. Section speed 6, that means you have section speed 1 and 2 connected, which is a 0, 1 disconnected. So if I was to attach switches to them and switch them both on, that's the speed that I would get. And all of those speeds, 1 to 6, 1 to 7, you can set those in the programming mode of the inverter. So if you want to switch X1 on and you want that to spin at, let's say, 30 Hertz or whatever that equates to on the lathe in terms of RPM, you can. And likewise for all the other ones. This little table at the bottom, what I've done, that's just to help me remember. Those are all of the connection points. There's your 15 volt. X6, I haven't used it. X5 down to X1, those are the colours of the alarm cable. COM port, the VL1, the 5 volt and the right COM port, those are for the potentiometer, for the variable speed over range. I haven't used the SP1 connection. Okay. On the other side of the page are all of the variable programming numbers. So where you've got a P value, that's your programming number, and you flick through on the control panel on the inverter, and you flick through one of these, and that's where you can start programming it. For example, here's a yellow one that I have used. So P10, so if I flick up the program 10 and then I select 2 as the value and save that, then I'm using an external analog signal to control the frequency, so to control the variable speed. So I need that setting for the pot control. Start up stop control sources is P11, and then again external port. So I've changed it so that it starts and stops using a switch on the outside. You can see a little picture of the box I made. So I've got those two, forward and reverse, and that's because I've set that value to 2 on this particular inverter. And then you have various other different things, jog modes and so on and so forth, and stopping modes, whether it's immediate stop or inertial stop or deceleration stop, and likewise. So all I've needed to do is to look at the yellow ones. Now this sheet, I'll put a link and you can download it from my website. I've looked at lots of inverters since I got a hold of this one, and they've all got similar features, just the program numbers are slightly different. So this might help somebody who's interested in doing a job like this. So let's see this thing moving, let's see it working. The inverter is on. You can see that, the display. Let me see if I can move this a better place so you can see the motor spinning. Can you still see everything? Not quite. Bring him over a bit. And you see, that's not bad. Alright, so the motor So obviously inside there. Got a little magnet on there, and I'll show you why in a minute. It's slipped. This thing isn't normally on there. That's my tack. I'll show you that again. So what I've got here, it's saying 17 Hertz. If I turn this on, then the controls on here come into effect. I could change the set on here and do it all here. I could press the green button and the motor would start. But everything's going to be controlled through this box. Okay, so I can flick forward and it'll run at the 17 Hertz, which is a particular RPM of that spindle. You'll notice that my display here is running all zeros. I did a video a while back of a cheap tachyometer, which is this thing. You see the little light on it? Well, that, once it gets into proximity of that thing, and this might fall off because the glue's not very good, but you can see it flashing away, hopefully. Don't know if you can, but it's just there. It's now picking up that magnet, so it's telling me the RPM of that motor. So we've got just over 1,000 there on 17 Hertz. Now, because of the potentiometer settings I told you before, these ones, and I've rigged them up. So here's the pot, and you can see the frequency increasing. This particular motor is maxed out at 50 Hertz. So when I increase this, so there's the 50 Hertz reading on there, and it's spinning at 2991-ish. Obviously, that's going to change because of the gearing I'll use when I attach it to the lathe. But that spindle there at 50 Hertz is spinning at nearly 3,000 RPM. Okay? Now, what about these other things? Well, let's say I've got these switches. Can you remember the X1, X2, X3, all that stuff? Well, I've got a hardwired button here, and if I flick that in, that will engage one of those fixed speeds. So if I click that in, no matter what I've got the pot set at, I flick that in, and I can predetermine the hertz for that spin. So at the minute, that first button, I've got it set to 40 Hertz, which is quite a high spin. The one next to it, the yellow one, I've got that set really slow. I've got that set to just 5 Hertz. And that's just turning around there and it's spinning at 291. Now if I do a through the pulleys, that could end up to be, you know, when you work out the ratio of the two pulleys, that could be down to something like 50 RPM. But there's going to have to be a balance between hertz I put in there and torque of that motor. You can turn the hertz down too much and you can stop the motor with your hands. So we're going to have to find a good balance to find out what a workable slow speed is. But that is certainly a good speed to have a look at a job. When you're spinning and when you're turning the piece of wood, sometimes you just want to have a quick look at it in slow motion. Well, that would be nice just to flick that switch on. I've got another button here which is a momentary switch, so it only works when you press it, and I've got that one also set to a very slow speed. So if I'm spinning a job, I can just quickly press this and hold it. It'll slow the lathe down. I can just have a look, see what it looks like, see how the cuts are going, and as soon as I leave loose, it goes back to whatever the pot was set at. I did say you can have combinations of these, so that's the fast one. It's set at 40 at the minute. I could change that. The yellow one was set at a slow speed 5. If I put both of them on, it's now set at 20. So fixed speeds, I've got 3 I can play with: the blue one, the yellow one, and then a combination. You do, if you want, you could hold that momentary one and get a 4th speed. I could flick the yellow one in, hold the momentary one, get a 5th speed. I could put them all on and get a 6th speed. That's the X1 all the way up to X6 that was saw in the instructions. Obviously I've got it rigged up so you can do reverse, and all of what I've just shown you can also be done in reverse. Obviously something I've never had on the Draper. I've built in an emergency stop, so you just whack that and it'll stop the lathe, and it has it doesn't stop with inertia, it's a deceleration stop, so it stops pretty quick. And this all won't work again until you release that. So this box, I've fixed some magnets on it so I can stand it on the lathe. I'll put it on the lathe like that. This box is going to go somewhere else. The tack is going to be attached somewhere. Obviously it's going to be attached to the pulleys, not the spindle of the motor. And that's pretty much it on the rig up of this. Now the back of here, I'll take this off and show you what it's like, just to give you an idea. It looks horrendous, but it's not that bad. Once you get into it, it's okay. So let's turn everything off, let's take the power out, and I'll open this up and show you. Be careful with these. I've just pulled the plug out, and these must have huge capacitors in. It's still showing power. I could actually turn that on and spin the lathe for a few seconds until that capacitor drained, and it's got no power again. So just something to think about if you're going to start sticking your fingers into them things and the power's unplugged. It could be still holding a charge. Alright, let's take the back of this off and show you what it looks like. Right, so it looks crackers. Okay, absolutely crackers. It's only ever maximum 15 volts in here. Now what we've got in here is all the switches. I'll get that torch again. Where's it gone? You got all the switches, you got the tack, you got all the other ones. That big one on the bottom right, that is the that's the emergency stop. You've got your pot in the bottom corner. Got all the switches down there, and it's all just very light wiring. My box, I've got some little brass thread inserts there. The handle is from a kitchen drawer. And it all works okay. The magnets are just riveted in, and it looks a bit of a mess in there. All the glue there, all the hot glue guns, just to make sure nothing rattles free. Obviously a connector block. I've got all written on there, the different connections, which kept me right. A load of the connections use the COM port, the left COM port, so you'll see you've got loads of them going into that one there. So I've put like a little crimp connector onto the cables, then I've put the crimp connector into the terminal block. Okay, now looking at that first glance, you'll think I could never do that. You can. Seriously, there's 3 switches which are exactly the same. There's a push to make switch which is slightly different. The pot, you just figure out which are the 3 connections that go to the various thing on the inverter, and it all comes together just piece by piece. I didn't do this in one day. It took a few days of getting things working and then putting it all together. All right. It's amazing how much metal dust you have in a shop. Look at this, look at that. Anyway, so that's all good. Let's take the head off the lathe and let's try and see how we're going to get this motor onto it. I'm just going to disconnect the cable. There's my trusty handle on my lathe. How to make that? This lathe doesn't come with the spin wheel on the left hand side. I've had that for ages. Okay. Boom. And that's my lathe head. appreciate it's filthy, alright? It's used every day. And what I'm gonna do is give it a bit of a clean. So theoretically, what's coming off? These Reeves pulleys are coming off, both of them. It's going to get a good clean. The motor's coming off. I'm going to clean the lathe, which is also looking a bit tragic. Let's see how it goes. Do something like that. It's going to be too big, so I need to turn this down a bit. This is a wheel I've made. I know it's wood. I did buy this and this, okay? And to be honest, I think I might use that one. But I wanted a small dia one for there, so I've made this one, okay? Yeah, I think we'll be using this, since it's going to work. And I don't have to turn that down, because at the minute I've taken my lathe head off, so how the hell am I going to spin it? Right, so that will be used for something else. These are swine. Spring clips, I think. Are they? Spring clips. It's gonna go twang in my face. You didn't go twang. Right, I want a magnet. There is a magnet. You sit there. I should have left this at the highest speed, and that gets the that would get this off easier, but I haven't, so we're gonna have to just try our best. Ow. There we go. Now that belt, I've got more bits that can go in, depends on where it needs to be for the new build. Let's see what Allen key that is. Wouldn't you believe it? What did we do differently? And it just came off. Weird, man. Weird. this one, I need to undo a couple of bolts down here. Or do I need my fixers? I think I need my fixers. That's easy, that one. That's got its own bearing in for the speed adjuster, but what you're left with is the shaft, bearing there, and the bearing here. Now let's get this motor off. Okay. Smaller motor, it's got a much smaller foot. So the bigger motor, I'm going to have to use a bit of board here. I'm going to use that thick plywood to create a foot, which will go on here. So there's the old motor off. I'm going to take this off. So, those things are renowned for falling up. There we go. So that beast is going to be put to one side until we can figure out where it's going to be used. Alright. Right, I'm going to clean this up. Off camera probably. And then come back when we can actually see through the crap. See through the muck, sorry. Technical term. Well, there's some other bits to come off. Well, I'm actually just going to undo this grab clamp, which is to attach it to the base. That's the swivel mechanism. Don't think it's brilliant, to be honest, but do this job. Right, this is going to get a bit of a clean. Back on. Oh, there's some other bits to come out. This actual thing doesn't need to be in this, so the speed adjuster will take that off. Comes out, which will allow that to come out. Got some degreaser. Let's go and get this washed. I think we're going to use that bottom bolt there with the bottom fixing to the head. That'll give it enough height in order to clear the bed when it turns round. So I need to take the motor off this board, cut it, it's on the bandsaw, and I'm going to countersink these bolts. I might try and drill that head so that I can fix it in 3 places. So if you can make out that, that's the motor I was given. D90L, 2.2 kilowatts. It's saying 2820. I think that is what it's saying is the max speed. Everything else 50 hertz. Everything else I'm not really sure. Not a connoisseur or professional with this, but there you go. And that's where we are at. Doubt this will be the right size. Right, get on the lathe. Alright, so we're just doing a mock up here. I'm gonna connect this up. Right, this is the first ever spin of this build. Alright, here we go. It helps if I connect it to the motor. Right, first ever spin. Inverter's down here. Alright. Control box here. I haven't connected the tacky yet. I'm going to decide where to put that inside. It's on no hertz at the minute. See what happens. That's kind of good. What do you think of that then? What do you think of that? Are you happy with that? What do you think? Yeah? Good? Now I've got to decide where to put the I've got to decide where is he going. Is he going up there? I always thought I'd need stronger magnets on that. And it appears that I will need stronger magnets on that. What do you think of that then? Well, it's spinning. Let's see if that belt slips. What do you think of that? You opened it. That's it. So I'll put this available to download from our website. I'll put a link at the bottom of the video. And obviously you don't have to have one of these. You could control it through the actual box. But obviously that makes it a lot nicer. Any comments, suggestions? I know that sticks out. And that's the kind of orientation of the motor. The whole thing could be switched over, but I would have to make a holder for the motor on this side, which could be done, of course. But at the minute, I'm really pleased. I'm pleased it goes on. There's still clearance to turn the head. I've got slow speeds, which I wanted. I've got high speeds, that'll do me. I could alter the max hertz of this and it could go higher than 50. The motor would cope. But job well done, I reckon. It's on there, it's working. Build a dust cover. I'm pretty pleased. Thanks very much for watching.
Are we right if our minds are tossing in the ocean there?